Now on to today's perspective, and it is exactly 1 year ago that the new US President Donald Trump, just a day after his inauguration speech, announced the halting of all US foreign aid pending a review. Now, just over a month later, 83% of USAID programs had been terminated, that causing a $60 billion funding gap, a gap, of course, that's been impossible to fill. Well, from exactly 1 year ago, let's hear from Elon Musk, head, of course, at the time, of the government of department efficiency.
And we are moving fast, so we will make mistakes, but we'll also fix the mistakes very quickly. And there was far too much of what USAID was doing was influencing elections in ways that I think were dubious and do not stand the light of day.
Elon Musk there with his son speaking a year ago. So what has the result been? What has it actually meant for those most affected? Well, I'm joined here on the programme now by Kevin Goldberg, who's Executive Director of Solidarités International, a charity that's been helped approaching 4.5 million people in 25 countries. Charity assists populations affected by conflicts and violence, epidemics, climate disasters and economic collapse. Thanks for coming in and talking to us. I mean, first of all, that moment when it was announced a year ago, I mean, do you remember what your colleagues' initial reactions were?
So we all had for sure been looking at what was being said during the campaign, and we knew that the system, the whole way the global foreign aid was being sort of attacked by the different groups. And I'm thinking about Project 2025, which was clearly stating that it needed a change. But what no one really had seen coming was the idea that everything could have been stopped in just 1 day. I mean, programs on the field, they're happening on an everyday basis. We have people that are working with us that we hired. We have millions of people that are depending on aid for their daily survival. And if you decide to stop everything on a day, no one is able to adapt. So it was really like a shock. It was a clear crisis. I think we dealt with it a bit like when we have a new emergency. We are humanitarians. We're very used to deal with emergency. But this one was at a scale that we had never seen before.
Give us a bit of an idea, give us an example of some of the schemes that you were involved in that just haven't been able to continue.
So to give you like a few examples, we have been in Afghanistan since 1980. So it's been a really long time. Afghanistan is one of the countries where Donald Trump and his colleagues have decided that there should be no more dollars being spent there. A lot of what we were doing there was being funded by USAID through their branch for humanitarian action. This had to be stopped just in a day, and that meant for us that we had to tell people on the ground, people that we talk to every day, that the food distribution that we were able to get, the cash that we were able to give them to provide for them to actually seek food on the market, and what we were doing to fix the water shortages that we were confronted to, these are things that we had to stop immediately.
So how have you been able to fill that gap? I mean, presumably it's impossible to fill it completely.
We didn't fill it, and no one is going to fill it. One thing maybe that people need to realize is the weight that the US had on the global humanitarian system. It accounted for more than 40% of all the different spendings, and this money is gone. I mean, the reduction is a part of it is still ongoing because these are decisions that have been taken the year before during the Biden administration. So this is a slow reduction, but the new money is not coming in. And that means that dozens of millions of people are going to be left aside from the humanitarian system and the humanitarian action of actors such as Solidarités International.
And you mentioned Afghanistan, and you work in a series of other countries, Sudan, various other places as well, where presumably similar decisions had to be made.
So Sudan, for example, is one of the worst humanitarian disasters we've seen for dozens of years. The scale of people that had to flee their homes because of the fightings, the fact that there's a famine in different places where a food shortage is something that's being felt by thousands. This is really a situation where we would like the international community to be able to answer the needs of these people. We also know that there is a very high risk of spillover over the other countries that are around Sudan. So it's not only about Sudan itself, it's also about the whole region that's being affected. And the way the Sudanese people have been able to cope with the conflict by being able to do local solidarity with the help of NGOs is something that I've been there. I've been quite impressed by what I was seeing, but the level of the response, the humanitarian response, is too scarce compared to the needs. And one of the reasons for this is again the funding.
Fans of Donald Trump will say, well, why should the US pay for this? Why is it the US who has to stand up and give this money to other countries when it's not helping people in America? I mean, presumably there is a bit of a problem here over other countries, maybe not stepping in to fill the gap or be at similar levels to US funding?
So that's music we've heard many times. And a lot of countries are actually on the same stream now, with the UK, Germany, or France also following on the budget decrease. But the fact is that this is in our common interest. This is not only about charity. It's if there's a new pandemic, if conflicts happen in new places. I mean, conflicts, for example, are extremely costly in terms of the global economy for the world. And when we provide humanitarian assistance, when we help people face the shocks that they're facing, this actually helps the global economy in a way, because it has those places to avoid the new crisis, and it's somehow sort of healing the region. So there is common interest for everyone to actually get humanitarian assistance to the right place.
It's not likely to come back, is it, this funding? I mean, maybe it will partially, but I mean, what's your thought for the future? I mean, do you have hope and optimism that some of the programs will perhaps be able to be restored?
So even if it's a terrible saying, we say that in every crisis there's an opportunity, for sure. And there's a lot of reforms that have been discussed in the humanitarian sector that are now being implemented at a very fast pace. And I believe a bit of it will improve the way we work. So, for example, we will do more in common with the mutualization process we have on logistics, for example. We also have been moving towards more implementation by local actors at a very rapid scale now. And the part of the instruments that are being used are going to be a little bit more efficient than they were before. But this being said, we talk about 239 million people that need humanitarian assistance. We think that maybe we will reach a bit more than 80 million this year. So you see the discrepancy, and that's a lot of people that are fighting for their survival without any help by anyone.
And presumably you, all those charities, all those NGOs, very much having to adapt their strategy as you look forward.
We have to adapt. We have been adapting already. We had to obviously say bye to a couple of colleagues last year. In terms of the scale, it's about a third of our operations that are being affected. So that means a global reduction of footprints here at our HQ, but also in our different countries of operation. What we have a little bit of a hope for is that the discussion is not over in the US. We still see that on both sides, on the Republican side, just like in the Democratic one, we see people that are actually still pleading for a stronger humanitarian intervention from the US. There is a bill that has been adopted at the Congress that still needs to be reviewed by the Senate and being signed by Donald Trump. If this bill is passed, it's going to be actually a bit of a better news for us.
Good to end with some optimism, at least. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us. Kevin Goldberg, Executive Director of Solidarités International. Thanks very much.